Football Show. Dan McDonnell is alongside me in studio from the Irish Independent, of course. Good evening again.
Evening, Joe, again.
You've been in all evening, of course. If you're just a Football Show podcaster, I would recommend the News Round podcast. It was a Dan McDonnell tour de force. Be it loud GAA or issues with Dublin attacking Evolution or the PGA Tour, Dan held court with some very specific and interesting information.
A bit harsh now. I think with PGA Tour stuff, like, I mean,
That was okay,
I'd actually understand what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Joe. I thought you'd have some sympathy for someone sort of, pretending to be interested in all sports on a regular basis.
Well played, actually.
You could empathise.
Good. No, I couldn't imagine.
See what you've done there. Oh, really? That's interesting, yeah.
Chelsea are 1-0 up at half time, so 1-1 on aggregate. They've been really good this evening. So Graham Potter has gone with the back three. Reece James, one wing back, Chilwell the other. They have pressed with huge intensity from minute one, closing down high, winning the ball back early. Dortmund have had brief periods where Chelsea may have dropped off a touch, but in the main it's been Chelsea domination. And they should be more than 1-0 up at half time. Kai Havertz, very involved. He should have been awarded a penalty early on. He was barged over in the area as he was pulling the trigger. I can't understand why the referee or the VAR official did not give it. But however, they didn't. And then he had the ball in the back of the net. Brilliant shot underside of the crossbar. But the initial movement had been offside by another player. And so it was instant flag in the air wasn't given. But really good shot. And you kind of thought, oh, this could be one of those nights for Chelsea, who again have been so good, so energetic, pressed so high. Raheem Sterling just before the break. Ball comes in from the left. Sterling has a swing at it with his right, completely fluffs his lines, but barges a little bit, and the ball ricochets back to him, and then he swings his foot at it again and whacks it into the roof of the net. So Chelsea 1-0 up, and deservedly so at half time is where we are. Yeah,
like it did. I mean, you might have mentioned it briefly before news. It did feel like it was one of those nights brewing for Chelsea, just with the sort of the near misses, as you mentioned, like, the Havertz one off the strike off the inside of the post as well, and like you're thinking, manager under fire, he's having no luck. It's like a sort of a hard luck story is building. Like, the one thing you would say is, and it's very dangerous on the basis of like one game, but like generally, when you have that end of days moment for a manager where they're nearing the end of the road, like you have this abject display that reveals all the fault lines that are there, but actually you couldn't watch that Chelsea performance and go, geez, this is a team that's mentally checked out, that isn't playing for their manager, that isn't invested. Now again, like, it's actually sometimes it's the confidence to see it through now. I mean, they are only level on aggregate now. They have to go and win the game now and see if they can actually go and do it. But you would take more encouragement from that 45 minutes if you were despondent about where they were going under Potter, you would say.
And there's no doubt they look familiarly impressive again with Chilwell and Reece James up and down both flanks. It's just a formation that suits their arsenal.
Yeah, and like, as I said, is one of the mitigation for Potter is, like, he hasn't always had all these options available to him, and has he actually managed Chelsea with a full deck at all, at any point in the circumstances, like, inheriting a squad that was going to be changed in the January, and then you're early enough into that phase now. Like, I think, like, all the arguments are there to give him a longer crack at it, aside from the fact that at Chelsea, when your results are so, when you're suffering such a bad run of results, like, it just becomes borderline untenable at a point, because the club like sacrifice the manager because they can. That's what they always do.
It's not the most amazing Champions League evening. Tomorrow definitely catches the eye. So you've Bayern Munich, PSG, and Spurs, AC Milan. I've just seen Neymar is out for the season now, actually. This is the way it tends to go for Neymar in Champions League knockout stages at PSG. So he's been ruled out for 4 months, ankle injury. It was a gruesome, and he was unlucky, gruesome enough injury against Lille on February 19th. And he's going to have surgery in Doha. And unless PSG make the final, that's pretty much him done. He was having a very good season pre-World Cup. You suspect much of the last 18 months of his life was building up to being in good shape for the World Cup. And since then, it hasn't been good. Returned overweight. Mbappe had those very loaded comments after PSG were abysmal against Bayern Munich, where he said that if some players could, be dedicated and train hard and sleep well, we might have a chance. And subsequent to that, Neymar has the injury, and that's going to be that, you would think, for his season. And again, pre-World Cup, he'd scored 18 goals. He was on fire, and you suspect that may have dealt almost a fatal blow to Neymar.
Yeah, I feel like, but it was one of the variables with this season, right? Wasn't it, like how certain individuals react to this massive World Cup in the middle of it, and like it can go both ways, like a massive hangover or sort of being propelled on. Like you even see, okay, a different level completely, and he's back now, but like Foden is now purring again. But there was definitely a sense that he'd suffered. He'd suffered a degree of the after. Mbappe, he's been injured, right? But again, it's almost a sense that even the energy he brought to the Bayern Munich game when he was sort of when he really got, was brought into it, there is a sense of, okay, he's actually maybe enjoying his new status as Mbappe. The World Cup reminded people he's exceptionally good, and like he's gone from it. Even though you would think losing the final in the manner that you did could have a damaging impact, it hasn't been. But Neymar, that 20 minutes he had where he scores a goal that could be his iconic moment, and then you have the penalty shootout situation, and you're suddenly gone from hero to zero. It's sort of that is a hard blow to take when you are that little bit older and you don't have those shots at it again, and you have to go back to work and
diet and sleep
and see
for PSG. Why?
But see Messi come in,
True.
And even Mbappe, okay, he's won one of them as well.
But he returns a superstar.
Yeah, like how many World Cups have you got?
Yeah.
Well, I've got one.
It was interesting in this glowing, and it really was glowing, Sunday Times piece by Jonathan Northcroft about Casemiro at the weekend. There was just one line in it where he made the point that in Brazil now, they're starting to debate if Casemiro, as opposed to Neymar, was the best Brazilian player of the generation. So, yeah, it's been a tough time for Neymar, but he's not involved tomorrow. Speaking of bouncing back, Manchester United, Dan, the papers are awash with Manchester United
briefing
back. Yeah, briefing, I know. The leagues are back. I mean, this is a welcome development for all concerned.
So it's maybe people aren't interested in this, but me, with the journalistic hat, I always would look at these stories and go, just trying to figure out where that's coming from. Is this, and these are how football stories work in general. You'll have stuff coming out directly from a club. You'll have from an agent of a player. You'll have is it someone pushing something for the manager? You want to get this message out there because some of the detail, which I'm sure you'll run through. You kind of wonder just where it's coming from, because clearly when it's glowing, there's probably a different discourse around it to when it's malicious. When it's vicious, you're thinking, okay, well, this is a disaffected player, the agent of a disaffected player or something, or there's some angle here they're trying to get at people. Whereas this was more, they had a tough day and they came in on Monday and Ten Hag really got in control. So it's favourable briefing. So you got to know where is that coming from. That's my curiosity.
As in, you're thinking it came from Ten Hag camp?
Well, or is it are the club getting that message out?
My read on this is, because I don't think anybody comes out of it massively enhanced or criticised. I think there was just sheer curiosity as to what the hell happened the next morning at Carrington, and so journalists reached out to every contact they could. Just tell us what happened, and I think that's what this is.
No, I guess so. It's just there's elements of it they were just the. But some of it's like the things that fans want to hear,
sure,
as well too. It's a bit like the Sean Dyche coming into Everton. It's like, you're hearing reports of they've done this or they've done that, and it's like, yeah, that's what we want.
No, there's been some self-flagellation going on.
I mean,
there's no doubt.
Do you have the details there?
Some great stuff.
Okay, people can decide if they think this is just what happened or is it a version of events.
Have they been punished enough? So, back page of The Sun, for instance, Erik bus blast at his flops is the headline. Now, who's not continuing to read there? So the standout line there is that Ten Hag, 53. I mean, you have to give his age.
No, that's just a journalistic, stylistic thing, Joe.
Ten Hag, 53.
Right in some time, pal.
Why do I need to get his age there?
Because it's the information, it's the detail. You still put in someone's age, maybe their nationality. Otherwise, it's just Ten Hag, Ten Hag, Ten Hag, Ten Hag, Ten Hag.
Mm-hmm.
It's repetition, and His age is a piece of information. Like people reading it in 10, 15 years' time, to remind ourselves what age he was at that point.
Fair point. Ten Hag, 53, made them suffer in silence by insisting that they sit and listen to their heated rivals' celebrations.
That's what I want. I want to know if I've had a bad day, if I've had a bad weekend. I want to know if they've had a really bad time.
Nobody speak, sit and listen.
Was it just the Anfield crowd noises they had to sit through?
It's not entirely clear if that part was on the bus or perhaps in the dressing room.
I like the idea of them being asked to just sit through. Like a sort of a Guantanamo Bay thing, like let's pump through like what's the worst song you could hear repeatedly. This Anfield crowd noises, that'll really that'll get the teeth grinding.
So he arrived at 7 a.m. Carrington the next morning. By the way, this isn't as dramatic as I'm presenting it, but we'll present it nonetheless. 7 a.m. Ten Hag, 53, Dutch arrived. Am I getting into the rhythm of it now?
The Dutchman, comma.
And so he arrived at 7. Players arrived at 9. This was on the Independent website. Still smarting from the embarrassing defeat, the Dutch manager had prepared a number of exercises to provoke a reaction for what was, for so many of his squad, the lowest point of their careers. So he had prepared a number of exercises. All the players tried to avoid the prying cameras of the waiting paparazzi on the approach to the training ground. An uncomfortable array of home truths awaited them. So according to reports in the British media, Ten Hag, 53, has attempted to make his squad angry. He's attempted to make them angry.
The former Ajax manager.
By requesting them to watch back the critical moments of the second half capitulation. So Ten Hag stopped short of showing them the entire game, but he did select clips of the video nasty, which are believed to have cut deep. Red Devils players were also asked to sit in silence in Carrington in the first team dressing room as they were replayed audio clips of the Anfield crowd's reaction to the horror show.
That's what that was the information that really it just struck me again though.
Where would you get that crowd noise from?
Well, during like you could get the no commentary version of.
Are you telling me Ten Hag 53 got onto Sky Sports and said, "Can I have the feed without Martin Tyler?"
I would say the former Ajax manager and his staff like probably have their own recording of the game as well too. I'm sure their analysts don't just knock off the Sky coverage.
They've taken it from their
I don't think
platform.
I don't think they have to watch it back with sort of Martin Tyler and Gary Neville as they're doing and turn the volume down.
I presume there are no commentators on those platforms.
No, I would have thought so. But I mean, or maybe they just got someone to just record Anfield and just play it to them like a horror show.
Yeah, but there's a certain tone of hilarity that increases across the 7 games.
But again, to me, I'm just coming back to like this is great information to get out there that's very favourable, I think, to Ten Hag. I think like we're sort of half been joking about it here, but there is a sense of like you want to get it out there that the players are really feeling this,
They're suffering.
And maybe maybe I'm just like not good at sniffing out these stories, like if it happens, say, an Irish team or whatever. But I'm thinking even in other codes, like Irish Rugby World Cups or various things, you never hear this type of information afterwards about like big inquests and certain things that were done, like very like 7 a.m. arrival, pumping through the crowd, like, and I'm sure there are little tactics and things that come out. I'm just. How this is all played out there, it's like, this is great. This is exactly what you'd want to hear, wouldn't you? Maybe there's Manchester United fans out there thinking, don't really care, lost 7-0, this means nothing to me.
Perhaps. So that is interesting. So Carrington, Monday morning, let's sit in the first team dressing rooms, no one's allowed to talk, and they were replayed, the crowd cheering on 7 different occasions. And what the funny thing is? Internally, everyone just wouldn't be able to help themselves but to count. Now we're on to 3. 4,
it's definitely one or two.
5,
I'd say 1 or 2 stifes and a laugh.
6.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
I don't know.
They'd have to be.
It does say the piece, to be fair to Ten Hag, that apparently he's very mindful that they had a grueling 10-day schedule, Europa League victory over Barcelona, Carabao Cup win, coming back from goal down against West Ham. So he is not being too harsh on his squad this week. This is not the Brentford, let's run 48 kilometres or whatever.
The thing about it is that it's obviously a huge game because it's Liverpool and the rivalry and the symbolism of it, and it's a bit embarrassing, and it's probably a result that they'll talk about in 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years. But I don't know about you, but like going into that game on Sunday, yes, Liverpool Manchester United is a big game, but it's not as if it's a really big defining game in the context.
No,
of
if they
the
lose 2 or
season.
3-1, it's forgotten.
Do you know what I
fairly
mean? Like
quickly.
it's sort of there's a shock value to it, but I think personally it's not like it means that all the talk of the rebirth is wrong. I think that's inaccurate. It's just, but like I think there's a sort of hilarious aspect to the over top need to like show that you're really caring by the aftermath to this. Like it's, I think if Liverpool come fifth at the end of the season or whatever, and Manchester United are comfortably third, and they've maybe won the Europa League or something, I don't think this is a game that's going to be. It'll be brought up, but it's Newcastle beat Man United 5-0 back in the day. Was with Philippe Albert with a glorious chip, and it's a great memory. It's a great highlight. But
Yeah, here we are 30 years later, and you remember it
I
better
remember
than you remember most of that season.
Yeah, like you remember it. But I mean, who got trophies around that time?
Oh, okay, Roy. Kai Havertz is having a night, Dan.
Oh no,
He has just missed a penalty for Chelsea. So he stilted run up, 2-step run up. Keeper went the wrong way, and Kai Havertz left-footed it off the post.
just delete all those takes about it not being Chelsea's night. Is it building up again towards?
That sounds, so your general sense of the game, you were more in the Gary Neville, there was something a touch freakish about that second half game.
Yeah, but I think about Liverpool this season, probably talked about it before. I mean, Liverpool are still a great side on their day. Like they can be explosively brilliant,
And they
when
were
click. And we've talked about it actually here in
Bubbling of
recent
late.
weeks.
They were bubbling at times of late.
Yeah, no, it's there, but then they just can't really back it up themselves.
Sorry to interrupt. It's Kai Havertz's night, Dan, because VAR has intervened and it seems Dortmund players encroached into the box. Not that it affected him one iota, but it seems the penalty will be
Is
retaken.
it the Dortmund encroachment? I mean, well, yeah, it's nothing to do with the keeper on his line. The keeper has stayed on his line actually, by the looks of it.
No,
so
it's encroachment.
It's
It's
encroachment.
It's the Dortmund players coming into the box too early.
even though they're behind the Chelsea players who are encroaching into the box.
Seems that way, yeah. So I think it will be retaken. I suspect the Dortmund players around the referee are making the point that there were 2 Chelsea players coming into the box as well.
They were
so-
slower to react than the Chelsea players.
Yeah, but there were more of them. So Havertz is going to take it again. I mean,
As you said,
he's a man under a degree of pressure, Kai Havertz.
he has like scored the winner in a Champions League final. You sort of
Yeah, you forget that.
these things, wouldn't you?
He looked so classy around them, but it hasn't really worked out since. To be fair to him, he's not really a striker in the sense they're asking him to play it at the moment. So he's putting the ball down. So the moment to go, he took that stilted 2-step run up. Keeper dived to
Fans
keeper's
looking nervous, or in some
right.
cases getting their phone ready to
Yeah.
record the moment, one or the other.
Keeper dived to keeper's right. Havertz left-footed went the other side off the upright. Here he goes again. Oh, you're nervous for him. 52 minutes, Chelsea and Dortmund 1-1 on aggregate. Same run up, keeper doesn't move, keeper goes the same way, and this time he slides it into the net.
Same effort,
Oh.
just a little bit, a couple of inches to the left.
Everyone did the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. If these 2 moments were just parallel universes, you'd say, God, that was very close to the other one.
Yeah, it really was. And Dortmund players protesting. I think like the Dortmund players, it's one of those where the law is not on their side, even though it looks particularly harsh on them. You know what I mean? It's a technical application of the Dortmund encroachment.
Yeah. Havertz did well to keep his composure there because keeper was more ready for the run-up and really didn't dive until last second. And in fairness to Havertz, kept his composure. So that's Chelsea 2-0 up on the night, 2-1 up on aggregate. So fair enough on the Liverpool point, but on the United capitulation, you think it's as much just the freakishness of everything Liverpool touching going to gold, explaining United's capitulation as opposed to something rotten in the state of Denmark.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. I didn't actually hear Gary Neville after the game on Sunday. I usually would. I just didn't. And I seem to me like some stories exist in your scrolling consciousness, but it seems like there's been a bit of a backlash to some of his comments or whatever. I must admit, I haven't seen that. Yeah,
He didn't say United were good because there was an interesting moment where Graham Souness said, "Do you want to say what you said off air, Gary?"
Right, I completely missed it.
Well, when he said that, everyone sat up a bit straighter and said, "Go on, Graham."
It was an IKEA during the game, to be totally truthful, Joe.
Well, your loss.
Saw the highlights.
As soon as suggested Neville had said that United had played okay, had played well, or Liverpool hadn't played well, that Liverpool hadn't played well. And Gary said, "No, I didn't. I didn't say that." And then things started getting a bit tense. But Neville's basic point was Liverpool played well, United didn't play well, but the 7-0, he said, is a freak. It was just a bit of a freak. And he started using the word freak quite a lot.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean...
and he thought that United were marginally better team in the first half, so there was just a freakish quality to everything Liverpool touching going in.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like, I can probably see how he reached that conclusion, but sometimes some of the conversation around Liverpool and Manchester United is so partisan that someone's comments are just, there's an extra bit on top of feeling towards them because of it. Like, I suppose, well, if there's not something freakish about it, then presumably what happened will be reflected by what happens in the coming weeks to make it appear that this is not freakish. It was, in fact, in line with the trajectory of the respective teams.
And Souness on that point said, you know what, actually, I think United have been getting away with it.
Well, that's an opinion.
With it lately.
But that's an opinion. I mean, that's fair comment. Again, if it's duly backed up. I mean, the Barcelona game, I suppose there is these moments. You talked about Casemiro. Sorry to cut across you, but like Casemiro, like the Barcelona game was this extraordinary night. But like in fairness to Casemiro, talking about moments, like the brilliant block he made at the end of the first half in that game, where there were points in that game where they did get away with it. And it was reflected as this huge night of this club is back on track, but they were good in the second half. So it wasn't like sort of, they were clearly, I suppose every high end game will have a sliding doors moment where you can find an event to suit your argument. Well, if that hadn't gone in, what would have happened? I can see that point, but again, I think the Manchester United body of results is not just about luck. There's been, and I think with Ten Hag as well, to be fair, like the performance of individual players as well, like Rashford's renaissance or whatever. That's not like you're not getting away with that. It's a reflection of some better culture off the park, even if it does appear to be some very favourable briefing of the culture in response to Sunday.
The only thing everyone agreed on is that Bruno Fernandes is terrible. That was the one point everyone nodded and said, yeah, I agree on that. I was asking Jonathan Wilson if his captaincy is tenable going forward.
You're asking that because I'm sensing a no vibe off you.
I think it's difficult. I mean, the hands in the linesman, not great. He's not going to be punished for that. The moaning is really starting to grate on fans, and I would suspect players alike. I think the death knell was when Bacic went by him, and in like the most profound and eye-catching way, he just down tools and made it say, I'm not chasing back. I'm done. I don't think you can do that and be captain.
So who?
Casemiro.
I was just going to say, is that the one? And I think that's probably, but it's how you manage that, isn't it? Again, and I think in fairness, Ten Hag has managed those situations reasonably well.
It might depend to what extent he wants to keep Fernandes around.
Yeah,
and that's a point of debate increasingly.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Like, I mean, he's not naturally, like, he's not a figure you'd be sympathetic towards, Fernandes. But then you again wonder, is he that type of, like, okay, outwardly on the pitch you see his demeanour sometimes, and it wouldn't be terrific. But is he actually a sort of a niggly presence around the place that's actually effective enough as a captain in some way? I don't know. Like, you have this thrashing and this defeat, and like, I think the manager does have to have the ability to put it in context quickly and say, do I suddenly need to press reboot on everything we've done here because of this, or did you accept just the human condition is such that you can just have a bad day? But I know Nathan would have been quite critical of Fernandes here, was it maybe the week last week, and would have got some reaction from Manchester United fans, and some were saying, he's actually been good, but then after a 7-0 defeat, he suddenly doesn't have the credit in the bank, the sympathy. So like there's obviously a temptation for like revisionism of everything that's happened in the last while after a night like that. But I mean, this is the test of the manager to sort of keep calm and carry on, I suppose.
One last quick point as a final full stop on Anfield Sunday, just on the back page of the Sun. I mean, I was more there for Erik Bus Blast, yeah.
53-year-old.
It seems Manchester United believe they will, says Neil Custis, will land Harry Kane this summer if Spurs don't make top four. Old Trafford Chiefs reckon Spurs, is that the Glazers? The Chiefs? Wouldn't think so.
Hierarchy.
Yeah.
Not a word you could use.
They reckon if Spurs miss out in Champions League place, they will lower their asking price, which is 100 million at the moment for Kane. And United, according to this piece, have made contact with Kane's camp through a third party, and they have been encouraged by the response. So Kane, he turns 30 in July, and he's Spurs' all-time top scorer, so for him that's big box ticked, and his contract is out at the end of next season. So there's a degree of, if he doesn't sign an extension, Spurs will know the game is up, and so we might as well cash in on this guy to some extent rather than a Bosman in a year and a half's time, is the reading. Is
it as a motive of the club are seen to be cashing in as opposed to like Kane trying to engineer a move? Like, language is important with this stuff.
Well, I mean, I suspect Harry Kane is badly burned by his overlap interview with Gary Neville when he tried to engineer a move to Man City. And it turned out he was locked tightly into a contract with no release clause and just no escape. So I would think he would very, very cautiously agitate publicly. But the point here seems to be this will be less about Harry being unhappy, because frankly Spurs didn't give a damn that Harry was unhappy the last time. This will be about the fact that they don't have Champions League money and his contract is up in a year.
Yeah.
So do they want Harry Kane to walk away for free?
Yeah, and they have a new manager coming in. Like, who's that going to be? Is it Pochettino coming back? Does that affect things? Does a new manager at Spurs naturally want their best player, or in some ways do they want to like turn the page? You think that would be an unusual strategy, really, because Kane is still fantastic.
A curious career if he ends up staying at Spurs. Say this all plays out and it gets a motive, and he signs another 2-3 year deal, and suddenly he's 33, and then he's not as in demand, and Spurs give him another 2 years and he's 35 and pretty much winds down. And let's assume for a second, Dan, Spurs don't win a trophy.
Yeah.
How is Kane's career remembered?
Well, I suppose like Spurs all-time record goal scorer. If he hadn't, like, he has been to the 4 in England major tournament tilts, you know, like he's. I think if he didn't have that in his locker, it's worse. I mean, you could look at it and say, just thinking, it's like it's a higher grade version. To bring it to an Irish perspective, like, how is Seamus Coleman's career remembered? Okay, like, I know Harry Kane is one of the, like, he's gonna, if he takes Alan Shearer's record, like, I mean, he is an unbelievable legacy. I know Coleman is probably a grade down from that, but probably at times in his life you would think, does Coleman ever think, God, you know, inferior players to me have won league titles or won cups or whatever,
or even just to play at Old Trafford or play at Anfield.
Yeah, but in saying that,
Anfield,
in 10 years' time, you know, you're welcome back as a legend. This guy never left us, you know, and Harry Kane at a point, like, you know, it's like, how do you measure your happiness? He'll know himself deep down, right? Like, he did. I suppose the answer is like, he did try and engineer a move for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, and like a lot of the great one club men did that along the times too. Like, you know, Stephen Gerrard and John Terry, and at various times they were. I mean, you sort of.
Yeah, Letizia is almost the example of someone who genuinely didn't. Was happy to stay. It seemed.
But he probably believes his career is a hoax anyway. Did that even happen?
That's taking a turn. Yeah, it's interesting. So that's Manchester United confident-ish if Spurs don't make top 4. They'll get him. And at 30, you would think he'd still be a very good player.
Of course he would, yeah.
34, 35, 36, maybe in 37, the way things are going, he's looked after himself. So
yeah.
This isn't Robin van Persie coming for a last-ditch 24 months.
No, I guess not. I mean, but I suppose, like, you know, the older you get, the more susceptible you are to that. It was like the Mo Salah contract at Liverpool. It was that debate of, well, actually, how old, like, how does his age equate to long-term prospects? And people are like, oh, has he been as good this year? And you're thinking, like, it would be nice. I think it'd be just an interesting story to see Kane go somewhere else. You sort of still feel with him, like, the PSG thing was mentioned at a point when Pochettino was there. Even Bayern Munich be mentioned at a stage, and you think, yeah, would it be nice if he go overseas where he then maintains his Spurs status?
Yeah.
But still gets to go somewhere and, like, you know
that would be
some stuff.
The ideal. Go to PSG, win a French league or 2 or 3, and win a Champions League.
That'd be.
Whereas going to Manchester United,
I was going to say that, yeah,
potentially not
the,
winning
the romance
anything.
of the PSG project. Of
Well,
course.
I know there is
There'd be
that.
nothing. That'd be a real wholesome conclusion to his career, wouldn't it?
That's
That
true.
was somewhere he would never have gone if it wasn't
True.
for
That is true.
the Qatari money.
Like odds are he goes to Man United, they still don't win anything.
I mean, it's plausible.
Very plausible. In
The
terms
League
of
Cup,
in
you
terms
know.
of the league.
No,
or
it's
Champions
true.
League, it's
Well, they said that
odds
like,
against.
that's why the City one was such a guaranteed trophies.
trophy. Yeah, guaranteed Premier League.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break. It was a really interesting night last night in the League of Ireland. I want to chat to you about how things have started generally, because there have been full houses and just a real sense that it's a league continually on the up at the moment. Chelsea are 2-0 up against Dortmund, 65 minutes in the clock, so 2-1 on aggregate. Back in just 1 second. And the football show, as ever, is brought to you by Sky. You can watch Spurs Milan in the Champions League tomorrow night live on BT Sport. Bridge, Chelsea are 2-0 to the good against Borussia Dortmund. Kai Havertz's penalty, the second goal. Raheem Sterling in the first half with the first goal, so they're 2-1 up on aggregate. Meanwhile, Benfica 5-0 up at home to Club Brugge. Are you a Club Brugge man?
In the sense of how I pronounce the name.
Bruges. In Bruges.
Probably like instinctively would say Bruges, but probably no to say Brugge, I think. Just from purely it becoming a talking point.
They released a
last
statement
year.
apparently to encourage Brugge.
Yeah, I can understand it if it's your name. Like
Sure.
we get annoyed enough when Irish names get butchered, you know, or Hollywood actors are claimed as British. So like a lot of people disrespectfully getting your name wrong is probably something to deal with.
But I wouldn't mind if we're talking a different language here and there was just a different name for Dublin.
But that's true. But it's the Matt Doherty thing. It's like, you know, Matt Doherty, how it's been mangled
Yeah.
by commentators. That
That one
annoy
doesn't
us a
make
bit.
sense though.
But I mean,
The
exactly.
same language. That's different to Brugge and Bruges, no?
Yeah, but they probably was. I would think it more. It's a bit like racehorse names and stuff. It's a bit like a bit of. It's more respect to learn how people would like it to be pronounced.
Okay. Let's settle this off here.
Yes, I mean, thanks for that. That was some good content there.
Yeah, so League of Ireland very much up and running. Last night was busy. I would think in the main, most people would have seen the spectacular goal and not least the scoreline to match between Shamrock Rovers and Cork 4-4. You weren't at that game, but I'm sure you've seen the goals.
Yes.
So this is kind of interesting on the Rovers point as a jumping off point. They drew 1-1 away to Sligo. They drew 1-1 away to Drogheda. They lost 2-1 to Derry. You were at that game and you were saying it was a very high quality game. And then last night, another draw. So no win for the defending champions. What are we to read into that, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first two away games, so they played their first two games away because of just Tallagh's in the process of being completed and there's some building work going on. So just for whatever reason, they wanted to play the first two games away. They were 1-0 up away to Sligo Rovers. They were reduced to 10 men. They conceded in the 90th minute. Against Drogheda, they were 1-0 up, reduced to 9 men, conceded in the 90th minute. Could have lost that game. Against Derry at home, they played very well and just lost. But they were missing 3 suspended central defenders. Like they started the Derry City game last week with a midfielder and 2 converted fullbacks in their back three. Just a trio that will never play together, have never played together before, and will never do so again in a game like that from the start. So you could give them a pass for that. But now, they were so good against Derry that I assumed, okay, well, that's going to be the corner turned now. Bit sore over the defeat. They'll come in on the Monday, they'll beat Cork and they'll get going. But instead, they've been involved in this madcap 4-all game with some really haphazard defending with some of their first choice defenders back. And you're just thinking, it's just a little bit sketchy. Now, they do have a record in recent seasons. Like they're going for 4 in a row this year. They have been slow starters in some of those seasons. They drop points often in the first series of games. So you wouldn't be getting carried away with it. But like it's still just uncharacteristic. Like in previous seasons where they've struggled, it's been more laboured, eking out wins after not playing particularly well. Sort of just, like games that are drawn rather than giving away leads or like conceding 4 at home. It's just a little bit concerning. Like for a team you judge by the highest standards here, it's analysed more than it would be if it was someone else. But that's the price of like success, and they just have to be wary of it because as much as Derry didn't probably play particularly well, played okay, but you weren't watching Derry play Shamrock Rovers last week going, yes, they're here, they've arrived. Like they were missing some of their better players too, it must be said. But they've got a little bit more consistency about them already this year in terms of just even selection and various things. And you're thinking, yeah, they're not going to maybe just capitulate or lose momentum in a way that they did last season. Derry got to a very strong position early last season and then went through a run where they, I don't know, it was maybe 1 win in 10 or something, or very bad. But I feel like Derry are going to be better than that this year. So Shamrock Rovers just need to get moving. And their next 2 games, like, they're going to Talca on Friday to play Damien Duff's Shelbourne to give them their official title, who are a tough team to play against. Really not necessarily a great side to watch, but very hard to beat. And then Rovers play Pats again, which is on Patrick's Day. Be a huge crowd at that. And while Pats are struggling, and that's probably another story, they go to Tala and they can make life difficult. So suddenly, like, there's no easy win on paper for Rovers where you go, okay, they'll win that and they'll get going. They've actually dropped points against maybe teams that, you know, Drogheda and Cork, to be fair to them, were probably expected to be down towards the bottom half of the table this year. So you're thinking, yeah, they just need to just get going from somewhere.
Derry, for the record, 4-0 win last night against UCD, 2-1 win against Shamrock Rovers on Friday, and then they started off with a draw against St Pat's and a 2-0 win against Cork. In general terms, we're seeing very good crowds again, great excitement, just a sense that things continue to go in a good direction.
Yeah, and like, you know, sometimes that's just a very fluffy conversation, isn't it? It's like the league.
We'll move on.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's very much like, oh, the league, and it's like, oh, here's someone who, like, you know, likes the league coming in and talking about things are great in the league at the moment. And like, I'm sure, like, however long like we're doing this, at various points you've come in and said, oh, interesting times in the league, you know, good results for the Dundalk in Europe, or, you know, you'll find some hook maybe to latch onto and say, okay. But I think even now, like, what I find at the moment is even the cynics, like even the hardened cynics around the league, people who've been in the game like for a long time, are looking at some of the trends as regards crowds and saying, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Like, there's something happening here that hasn't happened before. And it's like, it's maybe in different parts of the country, there's different reasons for it. And maybe it's not been felt in every part of the country. But like I suppose in Dublin in particular, but also elsewhere, like, there's just a sense that actually, and it's early days, but there's evidence of last year where it did hold up, that attendance isn't 100% linked to like your team's results. That if there's a drop off, it's not like people are like, I'm never going to that again. There's almost a sense that there's a bigger base of people who are now committed to going regularly, and that's very striking.
And what I would say what's interesting about that is, traditionally, we might have discussed this, or others who love the league over the years might have discussed this and would have talked about the importance of increased media coverage and selling the league. I wouldn't say that's happened to any notable degree. It's been almost a very organic thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's definitely it leads you to evaluate the importance of certain things. Like, naturally, like I would have talked about this, like the fact Shamrock Rovers Derry top 2 wasn't on TV last week, I still think is bad, right? I still think that, like, particularly as it was such a good game and a good contest, I think there's like, RT were already committed to a rugby game from a long way out. I still think with the fixture list and with the planning, you can be more creative to ensure that, like, some of your top tier games are on the box. But
it is an under-20s rugby game, we should say.
Well, it was URC last week. This was on Friday.
Okay.
So that would have been in the... I would be critical of RT around certain things. I think in this one, there might have been a case of when the fixture lists were drawn up. I have no issue where the league is at with people timing the fixture list to hit certain weeks, certain games. I know it's meant to be done by computer, but I think you have to be an element. But it is true that, like, while the league still at times struggles to register in certain places, and, you know, you could have you could have sort of sports bulletins in certain places on the days of games where, you know, the games haven't been mentioned, but it almost is like it doesn't matter, in the sense of, like, the league to me has always had great potential, and yet sometimes it's unrealistic to think, oh yeah, all of a sudden it's going to have crowds to compete with whatever, you know, like some of the top inter-county crowds or something. That's probably unrealistic, but what you have is still particularly in Dublin, like a big city, a lot of people who would like to go, who have an interest in football, and they're tapping into more of them, and they're probably tapping into them younger. And also clubs, I think this is a big thing, like clubs, how they existed a decade ago was largely a men's first team, and that was sort of it. And like the underage teams might even in some cases wouldn't have been taken that seriously. Like now a lot of the clubs will have a senior men's team, a senior women's side now, or certainly two underage women's teams, and you'll have an under 13, 15, 17, 19s. That's players, that's parents, that's friends. There's a sense of attachment of, when my son plays for Pats, and let's go and watch their first team on a Friday night. And it feels like, as you said, a lot more organic, a lot more natural. Like, for example, like on Friday night,
We've got 30 seconds, sorry.
Yeah, St. Pat's are playing Bows on Friday. It's been sold out for a week, like 5,000 people at the game.
Yeah.
Like 5-6 years ago, if they were going for, if it's top of the table clash, you'd probably still expect a couple of thousand people at the game. It's been sold out a week, even though Pat's results have been poor.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. People are like, I'm going to the game on Friday, rather than let's see if they win and I'll decide whether to go. I think that's just a little significant shift, which I think is
relatively brief period of time as well.
Yeah, it is. And of course you can't get complacent, and there's a lot wrong with the facilities and venues, but it's actually also making a case for investment in those grounds. If you're saying, well, actually on match night there's a lot going on in this area, we can do more, and maybe that's a better funding argument than maybe something that's a little bit stagnant. You know, and you're saying, well, why should we invest in this? Now it's more like, well, it could be, how much better could it be if you could actually give it a little bit more from this point? And you're actually sort of not begging, you're more trying to come at with a slightly better lobbying point of view and saying, here's a little bit of potential, can you tap it a little bit more?
It's still Chelsea 2, Dortmund 0, 80 minutes on the clock, 2-1 on aggregate. The football show brought to you by Sky. You can watch Spurs Milan on BT Sport tomorrow night.
Football